If one race could capture all the intensity of drag racing, it was this one, the first race of the 1986 season, between three-time world champion Shirley Muldowney, competing for the first time since suffering a horrendous accident 18 months earlier, and her greatest rival, two-time and defending world champion Big Daddy Don Garlits.
She has run so good, and of course prior to that, in the press she has stated that, she's the only one that's any competition for me, and it's like I won the world championships because she wasn't out there, and and then she came in and has qualified under me. It's like she's backing up what she says. So if she knocks me out in this first round, it'll almost be like just granting her the world championship for 1985. What can you say, right?
That's ironic. It's two good cars right at the start, so I don't mind racing Big Daddy, and I don't think he minds racing me. The way we look at it is we try to get rid of the good ones and then go on from there, but it's going to be an awfully good race.
Despite the odds, the First Lady of Auto Racing, Shirley Muldowney, was back. This is Steve Evans. It was in June 1984 that Shirley Muldowney's career took a dramatic turn when she suffered devastating injuries in an accident during qualifying at the Grand Nationals in Montreal, Quebec, Canada. The inner tube of her left front tire wrapped itself around the steering mechanism and sent her car into a violent left-hand turn. The out-of-control car smashed into a muddy bank and disintegrated, sending Muldowney tumbling for at least another 500 feet. She broke both legs, her pelvis, her left hand, and almost completely severed her right thumb. Her long road to recovery took her from Montreal General to Detroit Hospital to Indianapolis and Dr. Terry Trammell.
I knew that I was in severe trouble. I just knew. Going into the spill, I thought to myself, and I remember precisely what my thoughts were. I'm in a good car, I'll just ride it out. This is the big one.
That car there was no way that the most physical of men could have kept that car from turning left.
No, Ed McCullough wouldn't have held this car. And he can hold anything. But it was not my day. I knew that I was in for an awful ride, and indeed I was.
Well, who tipped you off to the doctor in Indianapolis, the specialist?
Well, the doctor in Detroit, actually, it wasn't that he tipped me off, but it was his care that motivated me to go somewhere else. And people that are very close with the racing, people that are very close with the Penske group, they knew of a doctor named Terry Trammell in Indianapolis that was, first of all, a great racing fan and had worked on many racers with foot and leg injuries. Thought that my chances might be better if I took a ride to Indy.
A great doctor, no question, but also he knows the racer's head.
Oh, yes. Yeah, he knew where my head was. He was just surprised that I was as tiny as I was. He thought I was going to be a bigger lady. But I was already 6 months into the project, I'll call it, at that first time I saw Dr. Trammell, and at that time I was in severe trouble. There was still a chance of amputation, and there was not an absolute guarantee that I would be able to function well enough to go back and do what I do best. And he thought that there was a chance, but once he operated on me, he came out of the operating room still in his greens and told a news crew that yes, she'll race again.
As Shirley began to recuperate, she had to consider the question of what to do if she was unable to race again.
I didn't come up with anything I wanted to do. I'm sure I could have been forced into something and gotten used to it. And maybe if I spent a little time with something else, it could get my interest. But I'd never been able to even think of something that I could do where I could enjoy myself as much as I do when driving the car.
What caused the accident in '84 at Montreal could have happened to any top fuel driver out there, and they all knew it. Goodyear knew it too and did something about it.
Yes, they did. They went on to develop and produce a 320+ mile an hour front tire coupled together with a streaker wheel, and it's an infallible piece. I'm going to go so far as to say that. It's bulletproof. And they did that because of my accident. It's something that needed to happen.
Backed by the giant mail order company, Performance Automotive Warehouse, Shirley, son John, and crew chief Ron Tobler prepared to return to drag racing in January 1986.
There were times when I questioned, you have good days and you have bad days. But there were many days when I thought, am I going to be able to pull this off in the time allowed? And I had to enter into therapy the second week of September in California, and I barely crawled across the starting line, listen to me, the parking lot to get to the second floor via the elevator, and I barely made it on crutches and didn't think, how am I ever going to do this? But I did it every single day from September until January, and that is what made it happen for me. I was very strong when I got in the car. I didn't have great legs, but they were good enough to sit down and drive the race car. Couldn't run the quarter mile, but I certainly could drive it.
Indeed you could. You brought that car to Phoenix. You hadn't been in a race car in what, near almost 2 years. The look in your face when that engine lit.
Kind of
all
like
the pain went away. Everything went away. Tell me about it.
Just the first time where I got my thrill is when I sat in the car and they fired the motor. That's always thrilling to me, whether it's a match race, a national event, or the first time in 2 years. It's just music to my ears.
That thunder's still...
Yes, that rap, I like that. And it happened. I thought, gee, the car sounds good. We're going to go out and try to take things easy and meet the qualifications that I need to meet for NHRA standards. And lo and behold, the car looked like it was going to be just a killer for 86.
In fact,
that's a bad word to use, isn't it? A strong car, and that's precisely what it is, a very strong car.
Even though Shirley Muldowney lost to old nemesis Don Garlitz at the season-opening 1986 NHRA Winter Nationals, she proved again she was a winner. Shirley Muldowney's entire career has been a tribute to determination and willpower. Long before women began demanding equality, Shirley Muldowney took on the male-dominated world of drag racing. Progressing through a series of gas dragsters and fuel funny cars, she became a symbol and role model as the first woman to win an NHRA Top Fuel national event and a Top Fuel World Championship. She etched her name further in the record books when she became the first person to win a second Top Fuel World Championship and then an unprecedented third. This amazing woman spends her time between a home in Los Angeles, California, and this one in Mount Clemens, Michigan. It is here that most of the tangible evidence of her incredible career is housed.
Tell me about the home here. You bought this, 12, 13 years ago, just when you started making a little money as a professional drag racer.
It was my first home. I always lived in apartments when I was a kid. In fact, in the inner city. Used to a lot of cement, very little grass. So I wanted a place of my own, and I decided when I left New York that I needed a change in my life. And I came to Michigan. It was centrally located. I was close to everyone that I thought was going to, help make it happen in drag racing, and I made some friends here, so it was a new life for me.
Now you have the home in Los Angeles now as well, in the San Fernando Valley.
I bought it February before we had the accident, and I've owned it almost 3 years. I have yet to live in it. We had started construction for a race car shop, something that would house both race cars and give us room to work, and it worked out pretty good for us. We have a half acre and nice neighbors, some privacy there, and that's really what we're looking for. We didn't want to go into a garage complex.
And when you got a nice little house, you had to get a nice little dog.
Yes, I've always liked animals more than almost anything I can think of. And Skippy was the perfect dog. She came along, and I thought that, well, I have a good friend. I'm going to keep her for a long time. And she's, for 13 years old, she has a lot of heart, and I think she's going to live maybe 13 more.
And she's been to a lot of drag races.
Every single one. She has, with no exaggeration at all, 1.5 million miles on her.
Shirley Muldowney's love of automobiles began very early. Growing up in Schenectady, New York in the mid-50s, Shirley lived a typical teenager's life. Sock hops, drive-ins, and of course, romance. For Shirley, Rourke, romance took the form of her future husband, Jack Muldowney, in his 1950 Mercury. As for high school, well, Shirley had other things on her mind.
Were you a good student in high school?
No.
Could you have been?
Yes. I just, first of all, I didn't care and should have, but I was always late. My mind was always somewhere else. I had a lot of things that distracted me, but the teachers would pound it into my head constantly, Shirley, you are not going to make your living riding around in hot rod cars.
But when did cars become a part of your life? Was boys first and then cars?
Oh, I liked boys. Mm-hmm. Sure, I liked boys, but my love was horses. I used to hitchhike to the horse barns, and from on the outer limits of the city, and we're talking maybe 10, 12 miles, and I would do this with my girlfriends, and that's how I got introduced to the local hot rod. Thumbing a ride.
Could you get a date with Shirley Muldowney if you'd let her drive your hot rod?
Absolutely.
When did you first meet Jack? Did he have that burning desire to build cars when you first met him? Was he in school then? Or?
He was postgraduate. That's when I got interested in school. Jack was a postgraduate, and he would wait for me, lunch hour, out in front of the school, and I mean, I'd be out 15 minutes before the bell, but...
and you'd have been in what grade?
I was in my junior year, midway through my junior year, and that's really where it all started. And we spent a lot of time together. He taught me how to drive, and then he helped me get a job as a car hop in a place called the Dutch Boy. And he would, being part of a car enthusiast group called the Road Kings, he would patronize this car hop restaurant.
For Shirley Muldowney, once bitten by the bug, there was only racing. On the local drag strip every Wednesday night, and on the street the rest of the week.
We were driving very fast cars. We would street race from light to light, and then we would go a different stretch of road where we could do the top end thing. And it got us in trouble all the time.
With the police?
I was very intimidated by the police, though. They threatened in the early years that if I didn't stop what I was doing, they were going to put me in the armed forces.
Really?
And my dad, he fought long and hard to keep me home.
Tell me more about that.
I was always in trouble, Steve, only because by today's standards you wouldn't call it real trouble, but I just didn't know where I was going. I didn't know who I was.
Trouble, you mean curfew violations or?
And just name it, and I was involved in it. So.
Were you ever arrested?
No, but I was close. Mostly street racing, and I was warned many, many times. And it was dangerous what I was doing.
It sounds to me like maybe cars and later on auto racing kind of took a wayward girl and gave her a direction that she needed desperately.
I needed it desperately because I really wasn't going anywhere. The opportunity was not there for me. My parents, they were both very hardworking people, but they simply did not have the means to send me anywhere other than high school, and then I didn't take that and do anything with it either. So I found something very wonderful at a very young age.
Once Shirley decided racing gave her the direction she needed, she pursued it with vigor, campaigning a Corvette with husband Jack and young son John on New England's drag strips. In 1976, Shirley Muldowney firmly established herself as a dragster pilot at the Spring Nationals in Columbus, Ohio.
Which helmet up there, if it could talk, would tell us about your first ever NHRA victory?
The one on the end there.
That's the helmet I wore in 1976, and we won our first national event. In fact, we won 2 national events that year, and this helmet is very special.
What do you remember most about that first Columbus race? Do you remember who you raced in the final?
Yes, young fella, Edwards.
Bob Edwards.
What I remember most about the race is the fact that we ran quick and fast, and we had trouble all day long, and we were able to get through it, not with a great amount of luck, but we just weeded our way through the competition.
Do you remember the fans? They were absolutely crazy.
Yes, especially the ladies.
Mm-hmm.
They had finally someone that they could root for.
In winning her first national event at Columbus and her second, the World Finals later that same year, Shirley demonstrated she could drive a car as well as anyone.
You have always prided yourself on good starting line reactions. You've considered that your real job.
It is my job. If I don't do that job on the starting line, everything we've worked for is out the window. And it will, a lot of times it'll win the race for you. I used to be a lot better when we had the clutch cars, the swap your feet type of cars. Now with the glide type clutches, everyone isn't quite as good as they used to be, including me.
When you go to the line against the Garlets or the Coletta, what are you saying to yourself? I mean, I've got to leave him, this guy. I want to embarrass him a little bit.
That's right. Get his mind off what he's doing or what he's thinking about and try to get there first. And we'll say Don Garlits, for instance, he's thinking, gee, did I put the right nozzle in or do I have the right gear in the back end? A lot of things he might be thinking about other than what he should be thinking about.
And you're thinking about that light.
That's all I need to think about.
The next year, 1977, was a history-making year for Shirley.
Okay, now, which hat did first-time world champion Shirley Muldowney wear?
Right up there on the end there.
I see it. Okay, so this was the helmet you wore throughout 1977 to earn that #1.
That's right, and then once we did, we put the 1 on it.
What a year that was. A year like no one ever had before at that time.
In fact, Steve, we were the first to win 3 back-to-back.
And they were?
They were Columbus, Montreal, and Englishtown.
And you had it wrapped up by, I believe, Indianapolis?
Indianapolis, by the second round of Indy, which is a 5-round race. Was then 32-car field, and Frank Bradley had a mathematical chance and didn't deliver. And we went on to be the world champions.
Shirley had made history. She became the first woman to win an NHRA World Championship, the first woman, in fact, to win a major championship in any form of auto racing. As the 1980 drag racing season began, Shirley Muldowney, son John, and Ron Tobler wanted to prove the first World Championship was no fluke.
Boy, was 80 a year.
It was a wonderful year.
I noticed you didn't put the number 1 on this helmet again after what happened in 78.
We had learned our lesson.
Wait, let's take 80 from the beginning of the year. The first victory came when?
Pomona, the first race of the year.
It's a way to start.
That's right. We've done that before, but we went to the race with a brand new car that I had never driven before. We hadn't even fired the engine. And the car was a pretty car, something new for Ron Atterbury, and it was a very, very small car and got a lot of attention. We knew that if we were going to sell the car, we'd have to find somebody really little.
It got so much attention that there was some protest thought of anyway.
Yes.
That just because you were little and narrow at the hip shouldn't allow you to build an arrow like no one else could build.
That they came up with a lot of things, and nothing worked because we passed tech. We were there. We deserved to be there like anyone else, and we went out and we won the race, and we beat a good old friend of ours in the final. And it was our first national event.
Good old friend.
Connie Coletta. It
Oh,
was
I remember that race now.
It was our first race on our own that we won without anyone, and it was just the start of a wonderful, wonderful year.
As Shirley's crew celebrated their first national event victory on their own, at the end of the track, Shirley and Connie came together to bury the hatchet, at least temporarily. By the time Connie next met the lady in the second round of the Spring Nationals, a war of words had been declared.
Connie told me earlier that he thought he was a better driver than you are.
He's kidding himself. He learned a lot by working with me. And I don't know. He's a pretty good driver.
You really concentrated on the tree this one, didn't you?
I couldn't lose this one, you know. I'd never lived it down, really.
Despite engine trouble, Shirley and her crew continued to march through the field, defeating Larry Brown in the finals to capture her third Spring Nationals title. Coming into Indianapolis for the U.S. Nationals, the two early season wins by Shirley had her in the thick of the championship points battle, along with Gary Beck, Jeb Allen, and Marvin Graham. But her chances for a second World Championship suffered a setback when she red-lighted in the third round while racing Terry Kapp.
Would you rather red light once in a while or be late?
I'd rather red light.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah, I'd rather red light.
Okay, well, I'm sure now you're going to be watching this round with us to see what happens to points leader Gary Beck and Jeb Allen.
No, I think I'm going to go to the trailer and have a cool brew.
Kapp went on to win, defeating points contender Jeb Allen in the finals. The crew of the pink car regrouped, went on to the Fall Nationals in Seattle, and defeated Marvin Graham in the finals. So, as the NHRA Tour pulled into Ontario Motor Speedway for the last ever Winston World Finals held there, all four drivers, Gary Beck, Jeb Allen, Marvin Graham, and Shirley, were in contention for the World Championship. Odds-on favorite was Beck, but Muldowney, Graham, and Allen all had serious mathematical chances. Allen fell from contention early when he was unable to qualify. She then helped her own cause by eliminating Graham in the first round. That left only two, Muldowney and Beck, both trying for their second World Championships. The drama at Ontario mounted as in the second round, Shirley once again faced off against Connie Coletta. That victory and the celebration that followed became the final scene in the movie made of her life, Heart Like a Wheel. Coletta was more than just gracious in defeat. He seemed genuinely pleased that the lady might do it all on this day. But that put the pressure on Gary Beck, who matched up with Gary Cornwall in the next race. When Beck lost, Shirley and her crew were only a win light away from accomplishing a top fuel first, a second World Championship. That win light would have to come in the semifinals against upset-minded Cornwall.
As you were staging for that semifinal race, I was at the far end of the racetrack, and I had Gary and Penny back, and they had a bottle of champagne with them to celebrate their world championship.
Yes.
And when your pink car flashed by first, they obviously, there was no celebration, and they gave it to you.
They handed me the champagne, but I could see that they were downhearted. They were crushed. That's a hard time to lose in the very, very home stretch. And it was our day.
And you know, even though it was only the semifinals, NHRA had you parade that car back up that racetrack to just a cheering mob of fans.
It was a day I'll never forget. It was a heck of a run, Steve. I'll never forget. Some runs you never forget. That one is very fresh in my mind.
Shirley accomplished something no one before her had. She'd won a second Top Fuel World Championship. And, as icing on the cake, she beat Frank Bradley in the final round. The win and the championship on that Sunday in October 1980 combined to establish a new high water mark in the career of Shirley Muldowney. Her 2 world championships in 4 years established Shirley Muldowney as a dominant force in motorsports. She proved she was a driver par excellence, whose prowess behind the wheel of her pink dragster had few equals. Shirley fell off the pace slightly in 1981, but still managed to win 2 races. In 1982, Shirley set as her goal an unprecedented 3rd world championship.
81, an okay year, but 82, right back in form.
82 was a great year, Steve.
This one?
Yes, that's the one. We went on to obtain our very first major sponsorship with Pioneer Stereo. And they were very racing oriented. They knew what was going on, and they let us do our own thing, and that's what made it so comfortable.
And they were plenty excited, as we all were. The first race at Pomona, you were in the final round, looked like you had it won.
We did have it won. I think we were the class of the field. We didn't have an S line, the main inlet line that delivers the fuel from the tank to the motor, and it was straight line. What happened was it lost prime.
As you'd brake the car, the fuel would rush forward to the tank?
It would rush forward, and I wasn't able to save it. So you just can't tap the throttle on a fuel car. You're liable to blow the blower off. So you're also not allowed to refire.
Oh, what was going through your mind? You were trying to save
that fire.
It was crazy.
I was absolutely crazy, and I decided, well, this is it. You know, we're not going to win this one. I was already thinking of the next race. I wasn't even back to the starting line yet.
The second race of the year was the Gator Nationals, Gainesville, Florida. Shirley again dominated the field. And again, she had the pleasure of taking the measure of Connie Coletta in the semifinal round. But her performance was overshadowed by the presence of Don Garland. Big Daddy had taken time out from building his Museum of Drag Racing in Ocala, Florida, to compete on his home track. In what was becoming a storybook year for Shirley, it was fitting that the 2 old rivals would meet in the final round.
A lot of people wanted to see us win the race.
Sure.
And if looks could kill on the starting line. He was paying attention, but I looked at the tape many, many times, and the man definitely, he wanted it over with, but he wasn't really sure. He had a problem the previous round. He broke a motor, and he had to change engines, and I felt that definitely would be his downfall, and it was.
One of the most satisfied looks I've ever seen in her face was when we interviewed at the end of that racetrack. Total satisfaction.
It was, but I was glad it was over. The pressure of it, of a day, running 4 rounds like that is very, very great, Steve.
As rivalries in drag racing go, the Shirley Muldowney-Don Garlits confrontations were some of the best on the match race circuit. The old man and the lady, the king and queen of drag racing. No matter how it was built, when Shirley and Don met up on the track, everybody kept score.
Shirley and I, we've always PR'd our match races on the competitiveness of it. You know, I hated her, she hated me. We were going to scratch each other's eyes out at the racetrack and finally settle it in the seats of those cars. And so that really was a crowd pleaser. And the one thing that it did that none of the other match races did, it brought the women to the stands at the drag strip. Prior to that, the men had to just drag their girlfriends out there. You know, let's go out there and watch Ivo and Garlits run. But now, the girls wanted to go. They were saying, let's go see Shirley beat Big Daddy. And the guys would say, they're not going to beat Big Daddy. Shirley can't beat him.
It was guerrilla warfare, and it was serious business with us. And the track promoters had a field day. So did the media. They would hype this thing and play this thing up to the point where we were at each other's throats on race day. And of course, he got into town 3 or 4 days before I did, and he got a head start on me.
In the newspapers?
In the newspapers, and he was definitely hard on me.
Most of the stuff that was in the press, I have to fess up, was lots of it was to get hype, you know, to get the people to come out to the drags. You can't, you know, the people that are paying a lot of money to get into these things, they want to think they're seeing a real race. And if you went up there and you were really nice, they'd say, well, just one's going to win and the other's going to lose, you know. But if you kind of build it up in the press like that, then they think it is a real race, which in fact it really was.
But it reminds me of a kind of a brother-sister relationship, siblings. They can fight with each other all they want, but don't see anything bad about my brother or my sister. You're quick to defend each other, though, sometimes.
All the time. And he will stand up for me, and I will stand up for him. A lot of spectators will come over and say to me what they think I want to hear against Big Daddy, and vice versa. No wonder the man would get angry. No wonder I would get angry in the early days.
As the 1982 season progressed, Shirley found she had a new rival from an unexpected direction. Lucille Lee, a secretary turned racer. Suddenly, Muldowney lost her exclusivity as the only woman in Top Fuel. And to add insult to injury, Lucille beat her earlier in '82 at the Bakersfield March Meet.
My car was running awful good at Bakersfield, and of course she knows why she lost, and I know why I won. My car just flat out ran hers. You know, that's you can't really say there's driver expertise and something like that. She's got a whole lot more experience than I do. So I feel that's how it's going to be out here today. If I beat, then my car just flat out ran hers because she's an excellent driver.
Lucille was driving a car that was good on and off, depending on the conditions. I had a problem with Lucille only because of the fact she didn't know when to shut the car off. I respected her guts because she could get it from A to B, but she didn't know what was happening behind her, and that was frightening.
Shirley avenged her Bakersfield loss to Lee in the semifinals of the 1982 Cajun Nationals. But at the Spring Nationals, Columbus, Ohio, Lucille Lee put forth another concentrated effort to unseat Shirley as the first lady of auto racing.
Boy, some controversies raged that day surrounding Jeb Allen, Lucille Lee, and Lucille's car owner, Mark Danicus. You were one hot lady.
Yes, I was, and I think about that today, and I still get hot.
Tell us about it.
Jeb being the defending world champion, he was down on parts that year, and he wasn't really performing as up to his potential.
So then Jeb was running kind of a blocker for Lucille. They borrowed an engine from her, car owner, and you didn't like that a bit.
It was musical engines all day long, and then he couldn't make a round and gave her a bye. And then when it was time to put another motor in Lucille's car, the engine that wouldn't make it for Jeb suddenly appeared in Lucille's car.
Lucille cooked her engine on the bye run, necessitating still another engine change before the semifinals. There, Lee met up with Gary Beck. In what was one of the strangest races of the year, Lee beat Beck when Gary accidentally deployed the parachute, but in the process damaged her motor. With the attention again focused on her, Shirley came to the line against Jean Snow in the other semifinal race. She just blew by him, setting up yet another confrontation with Lucille Lee. Meanwhile, back in the pits, car owner Mark Danicus, aided by Jeb Allen and others, was putting still another rebuild engine into Lee's dragster. Throughout National Trail Raceway, the excitement was building for the first ever all-female Top Fuel final.
And there was fire in my eyes. We went to the starting line, and they were having engine problems, but I didn't think that there was any way in the world I was going to be beat. And we did go on to set, and I remember very well, 571, which was low EPA race.
In the final round.
In the final round.
Saved the best for Lucille Lee.
The best for last.
Despite all Shirley Muldowney had accomplished in Top Fuel racing, she had never won the big one, the U.S. Nationals. But 1982 looked to be her year. No one was going to keep her from the winner's circle at Indianapolis, except for maybe Connie Coletta. Both warriors waltzed through round number one. Mark Oswald cleared the way for the lady into the semifinals. Coletta kept pace, finding little challenge from Dick LaHaye. Shirley threw the gauntlet, challenging Coletta to a final round duel by beating Billy Williams in the semis. Coletta picked up the gauntlet, accepted the challenge by beating Gary Beck.
Indianapolis will never maybe top that.
No, I don't think anything ever will, because it was my Indy. Hopefully, we'll be able to do that again someday, but that is the race, the time, and the way we did it, who we beat in the final. It was something I'll never forget, Steve.
Tell me about staging for that final round. You looked over and there he was, Connie Coletta.
Yes.
Central castings, like a Hollywood script.
Yes, and he was having the best day of his career. Even though he didn't win, I think that was Connie's heyday then. He did come to the starting line, and I think he deserved a lot of credit for the performance that he put forth that weekend. It was a good leave on both cars, but we stretched it out, and he followed me through the finish line.
On a race like that, do you even breathe? I mean,
I'm not sure whether I took a breath on that run.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I'll take that, A-Double. Shirley, tell me about the race.
We weren't that worried about him. He had to borrow a motor from our good friend, the Budweiser man, and we thought that was his downfall.
Okay, now this gives you a big lead towards a world championship. I don't think anybody can catch you now.
I don't think so either. I don't think so either.
Congratulations again.
Thank you, NHRA.
The president of the National Hot Rod Association, Wally Parks, coming in for a hug. Boy, I like these lady champions. They're a lot more fun than the guys.
As Shirley staged for the first round of eliminations at the 1982 Winston World Finals, she was one win light away from clinching the World Championship. She crossed the finish line ahead of Dwight Salisbury and accomplished the seemingly impossible. She was world champion for the third time. Shirley's luck did not carry her to the winner's circle in 1986, but her performance throughout the year, especially at the season-ending Winston World Finals, laid to rest all doubts about her ability to beat the odds one more time. After a winless season and 3 disappointing qualifying runs at the World Finals, Shirley made a statement as only she can. Shirley Muldowney, who has been totally frustrated for 2 qualifying days. Whatever changes your crew made, Shirley, to bring this pink car around worked a 5:42 and a good speed, 2:67.
Quickest and fastest for me. I'm really proud of that.
Those are career bests?
Career best. My guys are great.
That spark, that will to win, it burns brightly in Shirley Muldowney. And whatever the future holds, there can be no doubt that Shirley will prove, as she has so many times before, that she is the First Lady of Motorsports.